Hi, this is Heidi from Garden Crossings, and today Rod and I are out in the landscape, and we're going to be trimming hydrangeas. The first one we're going to start with is the panicle hydrangea. Specifically, we're going to do Fire Light, and we're going to show you how we're going to trim it. So this is maybe a little aggressive, but they're getting too big, so we want to get them cut down shorter. Ooh, Rod got himself a new power tool, and I don't know much about it. Let's let him tell us about it.
Yeah, I went to our local hardware, Gemmons in Hudsonville, Ace Hardware store, picked up this Craftsman trimmers, if you want to call it that, pruners, and
Men and their tools, whatever makes the job easier, you get her done with it. So he is going to go ahead and start trimming this Fire Light hydrangea. We were just talking about how much we wanted to trim it back, and inside of the bush there is trimmings from where we've done it in the past, and we'll go in and take a look. So the first time we trimmed it, Rod, can you point to like, so it was about 2 foot from the base, maybe 18 inches. And then the next time we trimmed them, where's your next set? Okay, so there's the next set of where we trimmed. So that's probably more like about 3 foot from the ground. This plant right now is 6 foot for sure tall. So we're going to go back to where we had trimmed it last. So we're actually going to take it back about half of its height. Recommendation typically is to take off about the top third. We are going to go a little bit aggressive though, because we're just trying to dial back the size of some of these shrubs in the garden. Now you can see the plant still has a lot of its leaves. It's going through its fall coloration. Typically what we would recommend, and what is most recommended, is to wait until this plant has gone totally dormant for the season, meaning it's lost all of its leaves and is basically in its winter sleep. The reason why that's the recommendation is because when it's still maybe a little bit warm out and it's still in its green stage, the plant could put on additional growth this fall if we got a really warm spell. I'm not worried about that. If it does put on a little growth, like, I can handle that. We'll deal with it. But right now we wanted to get the garden taken care of and get things all trimmed back, because this is when we have time to do it. We are also, as he's cutting these hydrangea blooms out, I'm going to go through his pile and selectively pull out some of the larger blooms, and we're going to save those and dry those for our winter porch pot parties that we're going to be doing. Hydrangeas make a great like dried cut flower in those winter porch planters. So we're going to be utilizing some of our scraps essentially for that party that will be happening. We're starting on the first weekend before Thanksgiving and then going for 2 or 3 weekends into December. So looking forward to that new thing we'll be doing as well. So let's go ahead and continue to watch as he's trimming this shrub back. I'm going to go through the dried blooms and pull out the ones that I want for our party. And when we get finished, we'll show you the end result of how much he actually has trimmed off this shrub. Panicle or hardy hydrangeas bloom off of the new season's growth. So by trimming in the fall or in the early spring, you're not sacrificing any of the blooms on the plant. All the new blooms are going to come off from any new growth that occurs. So for what he's doing right now in the fall, it's not going to affect our blooms for next season. So I do want to point that out as well, because there are certain hydrangeas you can't trim at this time of year. So he's getting it done. How's your new tool working?
it works great.
He says it works like a charm. So all right, I'm going to start going through some of these dried ones and looking for what would be good for our parties. So what I'm looking for is, we have these small little ones. I don't want those. So I'm going to throw those into the trailer. This would be a nice one to stick into the porch planters. So I'm going to save this one, set it aside. as you can see when he's clipping, you can kind of see this is probably the old trim right about here, and he's clipping just below that. So these old trims here created branching for thickness and fullness, and cutting just below it, it's taken a lot more off.
Normally you would trim above it.
Normally you could trim above where you last cut. You look for kind of like where your little nodes are there, but you could also trim below. By trimming, that creates branching, and branching creates more flowers. So it is healthy to trim your shrubs. It just creates a little thickness and fullness to them. Sometimes though, what you might find is that the fresh new growth is a little bit weaker than some of the older stems. So in that first season, you might notice that it's a little bit, the softer stems might not be quite as sturdy, but then the next year, obviously it hardens up and will sturdy up as well. So from start to finish, it took about 8 minutes or so to trim this shrub. As he was trimming, he also kind of tried to round it out too, to create it kind of a symmetrical look to it. So that's pretty much what it looks like, how it's done. So now we'll head off and try to tackle some more shrubs in the garden.
So as I was trimming this, what it's hard to tell at this time of year which may be the dead branches. I could feel some of them because they were brittle, and others were more pliable. But what we should really do in the spring as well, like Heidi says, we don't have as much time in the spring, which you guys hopefully would have more time than us. But you want to make sure you're trimming out the dead branches as well. And like I said, it's a little bit more difficult for me to figure out which ones those are right now. But what I did is trimmed, sometimes I was trimming above branching where I trimmed last time or was pruned last time. Other times I wanted to take it down a little bit more, so I did that. But overall, our goal was to take it down 1/3 to 1/2 and let it branch and start all over. Now, we've done it before where we've taken it, no kidding, all the way to the ground. And if you got a shrub that you don't really care what happens to it, sometimes the best thing you can do is really, really cut it. And it could come back to be the beautiful thing ever, and you'll be happy you did. We've done it to 3 of our shrubs. We've done it to Limelight. We've done it to Cornus Arctic Fire. We've done it to Weigela Wine and Roses, and all of which have come back very, very well. Yes, you do risk that you will kill it, but most likely if you're doing it in the fall or not in the heat of the summer, most likely it will have some fighting chance to come back. So you'll be surprised at what you can do when you're like, oh, I can't trim that, but you can. So anyways, like I said earlier, I grabbed the tool. I bought the tool this morning from our local hardware, Craftsman, and it's worked really, really well. Heidi first said, "Oh, just bring the chainsaw home." Yeah. Well, if you do that, you can do it. It probably is quick, but you're not getting the prunes where you want them. This way I can come around, shape it a little bit better. And the last thing I wanted to do was do it with my wrists all the time. Otherwise, wake up tomorrow morning with numb wrists, numb hands, whatever.